Welcome to this explainer. It's pretty easy to think of a business as just a self-contained machine. You put raw materials and labor in, and boom, you get products and profit out. But the reality? It's far more complex than that. Every single business, from your neighborhood coffee shop to massive global corporations, operates within a huge, constantly shifting external environment. So today we're going to map out what we call the ripple effect. We're going to zoom out, step by step, starting from the strict rules laid down by local governments, all the way out to the monumental forces of the global ecosystem.
So, here's our roadmap for this macro-environmental obstacle course. We'll be exploring 6 distinct ripples today: government ownership, the legal landscape, societal shifts, technology, the global business arena, and finally, environmental impacts. Let's jump right in.
First up, government ownership and control. We're looking at the closest and honestly often the most direct ripple of influence, how governments actually decide who owns and controls essential businesses in the first place. This sets up a classic tug-of-war in economics. On one side, you've got privatization. This is when a government transfers ownership of a public sector business right into the hands of private individuals or companies. Think of a company like British Airways. The main argument here? It's all about profit-driven efficiency. The idea is to strip away government bureaucracy, allow for faster decision-making, reduce waste, and let fierce market competition force the business to be its absolute best. But on the exact opposite side, we have nationalization. This is where a government actually takes control of privately owned businesses, and usually this happens in essential sectors, things like water, electricity, or railways. The focus here shifts completely away from raw profit and lands heavily on public welfare. It allows a government to run a fully integrated policy and ensure that vital, life-sustaining services are provided to society, even if they have to run at a loss. So it's a really delicate balancing act between market efficiency and social responsibility.
Moving on to navigating the legal landscape. Once a business is actually up and running, it has to run a very strict obstacle course laid out by the government. When you look at international employment laws, the extremes are frankly staggering. For instance, a standard work week in the Central African Republic can be up to 52 hours, whereas over in Denmark, it's a much shorter 37 hours. And get this, Denmark, along with Sweden and Norway, actually doesn't even have a legally mandated minimum wage. Instead, they rely on strong collective bargaining. And perhaps the most shocking to some of us, the minimum working age in a country like Sri Lanka can be as low as 10 years old. The crucial point we need to take away here is that these aren't just fun trivia facts. These drastic legal differences directly impact a multinational company's labor costs, their operational strategy, and as we'll see in a minute, their ethical obligations.
But hey, businesses don't just face legal pressure regarding how they treat their workers, they face immense legal pressure regarding how they treat you, the customer. Governments step in because, let's face it, consumers are fundamentally in a weaker position than a massive corporation. Let's break down a few key pillars. First, the Sale of Goods Act ensures products are actually safe and fit for their intended purpose. Then, the Trade Descriptions Act makes it strictly illegal to make false claims. I mean, you can't legally sell a plastic bag and call it genuine leather, right? And finally, the Consumer Protection Act means businesses are directly liable if their defective product causes damage or injury. Breaking these laws isn't just a slap on the wrist. We're talking massive lawsuits, crippling fines, and a completely shattered public reputation. Honesty and safety aren't just good morals anymore. They are strict legal requirements.
Next up, society, demographics, and ethics. Zooming out a bit further to our third ripple, we enter the realm of human populations and the shifting ethical standards that redefine how modern businesses actually have to operate.
11 billion. Just take a second to let that number sink in. That is the projected global population by the year 2100, up from 8 billion back in 2020. This metric is a massive tectonic shift for businesses, because it's not just about having more people around, it's about the completely changing structure of society itself. High-income countries are seeing rapidly aging populations. What does that mean? It means a shrinking pool of young workers and a massive shift in consumer demand directly toward healthcare and smaller, more accessible housing. A changing demographic structure means a business absolutely must adapt both its hiring practices and its entire product line if it wants to survive.
And as society shifts, so do our expectations of how businesses should behave. Enter corporate social responsibility, or CSR. The old model was simple, right? Maximize profit for the investors at all costs. But the new model, driven by what modern society demands, insists that a business has moral duties to all its stakeholders. That means its employees, its local community, and the environment. Practically, this means adopting ethical accounting practices, ensuring fair employment, and sourcing materials sustainably. Today's consumers want to know that the companies they buy from are actually contributing positively to the world, rather than just extracting wealth from it. Now, if a business decides to ignore these social responsibilities, well, they will inevitably clash with pressure groups. Organizations like Greenpeace or Amnesty International don't just send polite letters. They use a highly effective 3-step playbook to force change. Step 1. Generate massive media coverage and bad publicity to shine a giant spotlight on the harmful policy. Step 2. Influence consumer behavior. They often do this by organizing large-scale boycotts that hit the business right where it hurts, the revenue stream, like when consumer pressure actually forced Shell to change its oil platform dumping strategy. And Step 3. Use all that public momentum to lobby governments to introduce permanent, strict regulations. It's a powerful external force that businesses simply cannot afford to ignore.
All right, shifting gears to technology and market forces. This is a powerful, incredibly fast-moving tailwind that can either propel a business forward or completely disrupt it if handled poorly.
Look, we all know technology like artificial intelligence, robotics, and automation can drastically reduce costs and increase productivity. But you don't just buy a new AI system and plug it in. Introducing technology effectively requires a really careful, deliberate process. You have to analyze the specific business use, evaluate the costs, and crucially, this is the big one, you must involve your employees and managers early on. If a company suddenly drops automation onto the factory floor without any communication or training, it inevitably leads to massive drops in motivation, paralyzing job insecurity, and serious resistance from the workforce. Tech is an amazing tool, but it absolutely requires human buy-in to actually work.
Let's zoom out again to the global business arena. For our fifth ripple, we're looking way beyond national borders to the international stage, where free trade agreements and digital communication have basically shrunk the globe.
The undisputed heavyweights of this global arena? Multinational businesses, or MNCs. These are companies headquartered in one nation, but operating production facilities or retail branches in several others. So why do they do this? The advantages are huge. By expanding across borders, they can get way closer to their main consumer markets to save on transport, they can completely bypass strict import restrictions, and they can drastically lower their production costs by accessing cheaper labor and raw materials abroad.
But bringing a massive multinational into a host country is a total double-edged sword. On the positive side, MNCs can inject some much-needed foreign currency into a developing economy, create thousands of local jobs, train the workforce, and provide vital tax revenue for the host government. However, we have to look objectively at the severe risks here too. These massive entities can sometimes lead to workforce exploitation through shockingly low wages and long hours. They might exploit weaker environmental laws, creating severe pollution. And their sheer size and efficiency, it can easily squeeze out smaller local businesses that simply can't compete with them. It is a highly complex economic dynamic with really powerful arguments on both sides. Finally, we arrive at environmental impact issues. This is our sixth and largest ripple, the global ecosystem itself, and how the physical environment constrains and influences business activity.
We know manufacturing causes pollution, logistics create road congestion, and global supply chains pump out greenhouse gases. It's a lot. So, to address this, many modern businesses now utilize voluntary environmental audits. Think of this kind of like a financial audit, but for the planet. Independent checkers come in and meticulously measure the company's pollution and waste levels, their energy use, and their recycling rates. They then take those metrics and compare them against previous years and stated targets. This is exactly how a business proves to its stakeholders, the investors, employees, and customers, that it is actually taking tangible steps toward eco-friendly, sustainable decisions, rather than just making empty promises. Which brings us to our final and maybe most critical thought for this explainer. The external pressure on businesses to go green right now is immense, but ultimately, it's up to us as consumers to tell the difference between a company making genuinely sustainable decisions that protect our resources for future generations and a company that is simply greenwashing, using misleading claims and clever marketing to distract from their harmful activities. So, the next time you make a purchase, ask yourself, are you supporting true sustainability or are you just falling for the greenwash? Thank you for exploring the ripple effect with us. Keep questioning and keep learning.